Hello, everybody. Yep, I am back. I came to speak about one issue, then I thought about talking about another issue. Here I am at a different issue. So, I'm not even entirely sure how my thoughts are right now on it, but I have some sort of formulation. So I was speaking to someone a few weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, and we were talking about race, and that person saying to me, "Okay, well, you know what, William, I'm a different race, right?" Now people say, "Okay, there are no different races. There's only one race, the human race." I, I, at this point in time, in my 23 years of existence, of actually not existence, living different things, I think you can correct me if I'm wrong. There are different races. Phenotypically, we are different in certain aspects, but we have common traits. Maybe even more common traits, yes, than we do have different traits, making us one common species, a human species. But we are different races. We can have different races. What's wrong with having different races? It's almost as though people want to blanket the world and say, "Hey, we're all just the same." We're not. We're different phenotypically, we're different culturally. But when it comes to other things, such as genotypes, there are even some differences there, but we have most commonalities, making us one species. I am sure we can debate these things for a very long time, and I would be happy to debate anybody who wants to speak to me about these things. But let's get on the substantive issue. This person is saying to me, "William, I am white. You've known me for a long time. Sometimes I feel as though black people, especially those in North America, want to blanket us all as though, we are racist." I'm not a racist. I know that person. He is not a racist. And why is it that people have to think of us this way? And I'm saying to you, buddy, you know what? Yeah, descendants of people who are believed to be the colonial master, they get the slack. They get, not the slack, sorry, but they get the rebuff from all of those years of oppression. These years of oppression that are still going on. Women are oppressed. People of color are oppressed. And let me just say right now, we're black people. People of color, whatever you want to call us, all of us are really one shade, different shades of black anyways, but whatever. There's oppression going on. People still have something to say. People have Black Lives Matter. They have these people with All Lives Matter talking rubbish, right? Because obviously, they don't understand what it means to have something saying Black Lives Matter. We all believe in life, Back onto the issue. See, I'm always going this issue. My mind goes boom, 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 boom. Okay, back onto the issue. Sometimes I'm actually hearing like a melody in my head now. Anywho's, and I'm saying to him, okay, so yeah, we had this conversation, and he's saying to me what I just told you, and I say to him, but you know something, racism still exists. Because he's saying to me, it's not as bad as it was before. And I'm saying to him, you know what, it was overt before. It is no longer that overt, even though there are instances of it being overt, but it is not something that is a big public overt gesture or symbolism, no. But there is systemic racism. And the thing is, it's just the colonial masters. They no longer needed a physical force to keep you oppressed. Now there's neo-imperialism and neo-colonialism, right? This economic sort of slavery that goes on in the world today that people don't want to talk about, that is driven heavily by the capitalist mode of production. Not saying that capitalism inherently is evil, even though we should really get rid of, we shouldn't really use words like evil or whatever, good or bad, but obviously anything can be a tool for oppression. It just so happens that capitalism is the thing that's used for oppression. at this point in time in the world. Let's be real. People live off of oppression. Even to some extent, I would be living off of oppression. People, even the oppressed, live off of the oppression of others. So let's get that in our heads. But in terms of racism, there is systemic racism. There is a lot of it. There was a BBC radio documentary about systemic racism in America that brought a lot to bear in my mind. On the forefront. You would think that racism would be. One would even think sometimes, even though I would think about these things, but people wouldn't really think sometimes that even in our laws, how they're written, there is a lot of prejudice going to the extreme of racism. Now, to address the point about being white and not racist, you're white, you're not racist. If you're not racist, good. For those who are racist, okay. But what is the conversation that we could really be having in societies with black people, those advocating for the rights of blacks, advocating for reparations, and those who are white who are saying, hey, we're not racist. But this is this thing I'm going to say. We have many countries today which profited from slavery, from the colonial period, that say, hey, we know that racism is bad, yet the top agenda for CELAC, you should look up that acronym, CELAC, well, not really an acronym, look. Anyways, look up the organization, right? CELAC is arguing for CARICOM, is arguing for the ACP countries, African countries especially, are arguing for reparations. And the countries, the past colonial masters who say, hey, guess what? We know it's bad, we will not apologize. Why can't there be an apology? There has to be some reason for it. Why hasn't there been an apology for this? I've spoken about it on my Instagram channel before about, I sound old saying Instagram channel, about Charles Mills's book, Professor Charles Mills, Blackness Visible, where he speaks about Ashkenazi Jews getting reparations from the Germans, while people of African descent and Africans have not been given reparations. There's a phenotypical difference, a difference in skin. Ashkenazi Jews are still seen as people of European descent, and they predominantly are. And it was something Europeans did to their own. Well, non-Europeans are not given the same thing. And I'm not going to get into the whole which was worse and what's not. But we all know how long slavery went on. Good. We can have a discussion later on about whether or not it's even worth it today to go on to get reparations or not. What it would mean for reparations. And people have misconstrued ideas about what reparations are, or what the movement is. Right? You're white, you're not racist, but your government perpetuates racism. A lot of it is systemic. Good. What else? Insofar as your governments refuse to even apologize for the atrocities of the colonial period, you are going to be, for better or for worse, blanketed with the same brush. Your government represents you. It also represents the black people in your community. And if you're black people in your community, the people with whom you have no problem or asking or charging for, demanding that some sort of some sort of apology, some sort of reparation is given, and the end to certain practices, yeah, it's going to continue. We're going to continue being blanketed because pressure has to be put on you as well to do something about it. It is not enough to say, hey, I'm not racist. It's not even enough to say sympathize or empathize. Can you even empathize? It is incumbent on you to pressure your government as a non-racist white person to say, government, you represent me, and as your constituent, I believe it is time that we right the wrongs of the past. Because I recognize, and I do not think that many people who are white today recognize that they still benefit from the atrocities of the past. So while you're not racist, you're still benefiting from the systemic racism, the racist institutions, the institutions of prejudice, which affect what you call minorities. But when we look at the world, we see who really is a minority, right? Good. Insofar as that is the case, insofar as you benefit from the system you say you have no part of, you should be advocates of the people, and many of you are. Many of you are advocates of the movements. But you're going to have to realize something. As long as the system remains, and it has remained, it has not ended, it did not come down, it did not wither, it only fortified itself. Martin Luther King Jr. did not destroy the system. The system was just made more amicable. It amended itself, maybe even in a way worse than it was before, right? Insofar as that system remains, you're going to be in that fight, whether they're fighting against you, even if you don't want to be fighting against you, or you're fighting with them. It doesn't mean you have to be actively, in a march if you don't want to be in a march. Freedom, right? Democracy, freedom. But it does mean that your vote matters, not just at the general elections, but in general things. In smaller elections, local elections. Let's now move on to black people. In the United States of America, there is a substantial population of what they call African Americans, or black people, right? African American, first of all. Even the name African American, You can pick sense from nonsense of what I'm saying there. You have constituents who are black. You have constituencies predominantly black, and the representatives are white. Now, as I made a video before, there's no need to really vote along color lines and what's not. But if you are in a situation in various states which have historically strong roots in racism, you're feeling it as a black person, it is incumbent upon the collective blacks to decide they're going to make sure that someone is elected, white or black or whatever, who advocates on our behalf at the levels of city council and aldermen. We have mayors, governors, senators. There is no excuse. If you decide to live in a system, for you not to partake in that system, to make it as representative of you as it can be. If you decide to live in that system, if you decide the reformist approach, not the revolutionary approach, but the reformist approach, to live in the system, to work with it, to change it from within itself, then the only way it's going to change from within itself is if you start making the changes from within it. Currently, what you're doing, my fellow black people in America, you're just existing in there, basically wasting away, letting your rights be eroded. Many of you, yes, there are people marching on the street and what's not, but the ones who, but when it comes to the vote, not at the national level of presidents and what's not, but when it comes at your local levels, where those decisions matter so much, because you're in a federal system where you have states' rights, you have federal rights, and there are even some partitions of rights at micro levels. Your vote counts, and you're not participating where it matters most. Let me make it clear again. I'm not saying you have to vote along racial lines. Just like in my other video I said you don't have to vote along lines of sex. But what it means is that you have to vote for your interest. You have to participate in the system. Not only do you have to vote, you have to advocate, you have to go to the meetings, just like how parents should go to parent-teacher association meetings. You should be going to your local meetings. When there's a meeting, you can't afford to be complacent because you know the system is against you. You cannot afford to be complacent. You have to be there. You have to be in the system. You have to work in the system. You have to know who your alderman is. You need to know what his or her policies are. You need to know this. You need to know what your mayor wants for you. You need to know who funds your mayor. You need to know who funds your governor. You need to know the past votes of your representatives. You need to know who else wants to be representative. You need to know if you want to be representative. You need to know what your constitution, your state constitution, your federal constitution, what these things say to you, say for you, how you are protected. You need to get organized. Black people in the middle class need to get over themselves. They need to realize that they have a responsibility, not just to themselves, but to the collective. Because at the end of the day, and these things often end up being class issues more than race issues, you know. Yes, there are race issues, but they're also class issues. So when I'm speaking about black people in the middle class, I'm speaking about middle class people. That fictitious class, right? They need to realize as well that this system of liberal democracy in which they live heavily relies upon them to maintain the status quo. Because what happens often is that the middle class believes it is somewhere where it really isn't, ends up betraying its fellow people just because they think that they're a bit above, oppressing, suppressing those they believe are below them, because maybe the middle class has a bit more money. And at some point, it comes back to bite the middle class. And as we know the poem, they came for this person, came for that person, and eventually there was no one, right? We need to think. But of course, it is easier said than done, because philosophers have a lot of luxury to sit down and think. Human beings are occupied by their work and have little time to think. I guess that's why you're supposed to find a day of rest, right? Where these ideas come to you. Speaking of day of rest, something else I want to speak up to you all about. But that'll be another time. I hope you enjoyed. We're on Facebook, realtalk.bb. I'm on Instagram at World Coach. You can go onto the website, realtalk.bb. Like, share, subscribe. Subscribe to the YouTube channel to get more. Yeah, that's about it. See you next time.